Can Bitcoin hit 150 or even 200,000 by the end of 2025? That's the question I'll be answering in this video by giving you my own price prediction. I'll cover all of the major topics such as institutional adoption, corporate adoption, the changes in Bitcoin tech, and how all of these factors can actually change the price. And then finally, I'll conduct some technical analysis to give you a conservative and optimistic price target for Bitcoin for 2025. Now keep in mind, everything I say in this video is not financial advice. This is just my personal opinion. And with that disclaimer aside, let's get right into it. Now, to kick things off, let's go ahead and first talk about the institutional adoption for Bitcoin and why it's so important in determining the future price for Bitcoin. And the reason why it's so important is that institutional money, quote unquote, is considered the smart money of Wall Street, which basically means that if you figure out if these big banks that are investing billions of dollars, if they're investing that into Bitcoin, then obviously the price of the underlying asset, in this case Bitcoin, is going to go up. Similarly, if these banks are negative on Bitcoin, then the price is probably going to stay flat or go down. Now, when it comes to the institutional adoption for Bitcoin in specific, it's been a pretty rocky path in a sense that you have people like, for example, Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, basically saying in 2024, I don't care about Bitcoin, calling it the pet rock, basically mocking it. And even over here saying, my personal advice is don't get involved. So you definitely have both sides of the coin over here where you have people that don't like it and where you have people that do like it. Now, in my opinion, as of 2025, many financial regulators and institutions that used to be skeptical about Bitcoin are actually now warming up to the idea of Bitcoin. For example, the Security and Exchange Commission, which used to reject Bitcoin altogether as an asset, citing concerns about fraud and market manipulation, has really turned the page on it. They've really warmed up to Bitcoin. As we can see over here, they've approved certain trading products from BlackRock and from Bank of New York Mellon, which makes it very easy for people to buy Bitcoins directly from their bank account. Basically, this is a very big demand shift, in my opinion, and a very clear indicator that institutional players overall are embracing Bitcoin as a long-term asset and are allowing people to buy it and accumulate it. Okay, we can see over here that a lot of these institutions are actually racking up Bitcoin at a very high rate, with a net buy rate of about 683 Bitcoins in 2024 from big purchases like, for example, MicroStrategy and so on and so forth. And speaking of companies like MicroStrategy and just corporate adoption in general, if we take a look at this chart over here, we can see over the past 4 to 5 years, companies like MicroStrategy are just increasing their Bitcoin holdings exponentially and they're not selling it. Okay, so that's very huge. And we can see over here, these are all of the purchases that MicroStrategy has made, and they keep buying it over and over again. Okay, so right now they actually own 447,470 Bitcoins with an average purchase price of 58,000. So you do have people that don't like Bitcoin, but in my opinion, generally speaking, a lot of these institutions are actually in favor of Bitcoin. A lot of these corporations are also in favor of Bitcoin. Now, on that note, it's not just institutional or corporate-based adoption. What's also very important for Bitcoin's future price is nation-state adoption. You want to see countries adopting it. And we're already seeing that, for example. We're seeing, for example, countries like El Salvador that have already made Bitcoin their legal tender, where people that live there can basically buy and sell things using Bitcoin. And you're slowly starting to see more and more countries actually follow this exact step, especially countries that are currently struggling or depend very highly on the US dollar. They're trying to break away from it by actually investing in Bitcoin and figuring out how they can actually use Bitcoin in their own particular country. So that's another huge, huge sign that tells us that as time progresses, more and more countries will follow suit. This, by the way, happened in 2021. So this is 4 or 5 years ago now, right? So you're going to see more and more of these countries actually adopt it as legal tender. And once that happens, it's just going to be a matter of time until Bitcoin actually surpasses gold as a treasure of value, in my opinion. Now, with that in mind, the next thing I want to talk about is the technological advancements of Bitcoin, right? It's not just about adoption. It's about Bitcoin as a digital asset actually advancing and becoming more and more user-friendly. So, for example, if we take a look at this Reddit thread right here, he does a very good job of actually explaining what Bitcoin is. So over here, for example, he says that, it clearly already shines as a long-term store of value, which is fine. But now they're actually improving the infrastructure, right? They're actually having a layer 2 system of Bitcoin, which is called the Lightning infrastructure. And basically over here now, if you want to go ahead and buy and sell Bitcoin, with these improvements, it's going to be instant, near feeless, scalable, making Bitcoin a true currency. So if you ever want to send Bitcoin back and forth with these upgrades of the layer 2 solutions, you can go ahead and send and trade Bitcoin just like you would send cash with no real fees involved, no waiting times, no crazy amounts of complication. It's just very straightforward and it's just a matter of time. So it's just not, digital gold. More and more people will start to understand it, basically enhancing the liquidity and strengthening the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. Okay, and there's a lot of infrastructure and work being done behind this. So as time progresses, the technology behind Bitcoin is only going to improve, where it's going to come to a point it's like just using your currency right now for buying and selling things. Okay, so that's very important too. Now, with that in mind, the final thing I want to talk about over here is some of the technical indicators for Bitcoin and then give you my price prediction of where I see Bitcoin going. Now, when it comes to the technical analysis of Bitcoin, it's important to understand that Bitcoin has a history of following predictable patterns after halving events. Halving events basically happen every 4 years, where the amount of Bitcoins you can mine basically halves. Okay, so that's important to understand. And the last halving event basically happened April of 2024, and the one before that happened in 2020. So if we go ahead and take a look at the charts for the past 10 years for Bitcoin, this is what it looks like. And as we can already tell, it's been pretty exponential growth for Bitcoin. Had you bought Bitcoin in 2015, it would have cost you about $500 or so. And now you could have sold it for about $100,000. Now, what I really want to focus in on is the previous halving cycle and how it played out so that we can model its similar trajectory for 2024. Now, as I've already mentioned, the previous halving cycle happened in around May of 2020, and Bitcoin was about $9,000 at the time. After the halving, the next 6 months in 2020, Bitcoin skyrocketed to about $60,000 around March of 2021, and then it came down a whole bunch to $32,000, and then finally made its final leg up to $66,000, and this happened around October of 2021. Once that happened, then we had a bit of a crypto bear market for the next 2 to 3 years, and then we had our halving cycle again in April of 2024, so right about here somewhere, where Bitcoin was at the time of about $50,000 to $60,000 when the halving happened. After the halving, we've seen the initial trace up right now to $100,000. And I personally believe that's this right here. Okay, so that's where we are currently in our current halving cycle. So we're at about $100,000 and we're seeing a bit of a retracement down here, which is the equivalent over here for 2020. And I think after this is going to go up all the way to 150K. So in the next 6 months or so, I see it going up to 150K. There's probably going to be a drop after that to like 120 or 110, similar to what we saw over here after the initial trace up. It came down to 34,000. So we're going to go to 150,000 over here in the next 6 months, come down to 120,000. And then finally around October or November of 2025, I genuinely see Bitcoin going to about $200,000. That's my price estimation for what's going to happen by the end of 2025. And my conservative estimation is about $150,000 with a more realistic or optimistic price target of about $200,000 by December of 2025. So that's where I see Bitcoin going in the next 12 months. And then beyond that, in the next 5 to 10 years, I really see it surpassing gold. Currently, Bitcoin is at about 10% of gold, if I'm not mistaken. So there's quite a bit of up leg over here for Bitcoin to actually even go further and go to like $1,000 Bitcoin, $2,000 Bitcoin. Now, on top of that, the next thing I want to show you over here is the Bitcoin rainbow chart, which basically shows you the price action in terms of fear and greed levels over the years. And we can see right here that we're currently over here at $97,000 or so. And the green basically represents the accumulate phase. So basically, according to this particular chart, we should be buying Bitcoin over here. And we still haven't gone all the way up, right? So if we follow a similar trajectory of what happened in 2020, so we can see right here is where it pretty much peaked. We can see that if we go up over here, we're looking at, 400,000, 300,000. It's like crazy amounts of what it thinks Bitcoin is going to go up to. I think that's a bit of a, unrealistic target. So I personally think it's going to be about $200,000 or so. But you get the idea of why I think this is going to happen if we follow a similar trajectory to what happened in the previous halving cycle. So on that note, everybody, that's pretty much it for this video. Those are my price predictions for Bitcoin. Again, conservative target of $150,000, more of a realistic target of about $200,000 by the end of 2025. And I personally do own Bitcoin myself, and I don't see myself selling anytime soon. So on that note, if you like this video, guys, then go ahead and press the like button and share it with your friends. If you found it educational, then go ahead and subscribe to this channel. This is a new channel. I talk about all things crypto, so I would greatly appreciate your support. And on that note, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now, everybody.